Gupta, founder at 10x Coder Kids, and today you are gonna learn how to use access modifiers in Python. So let's get started. Alright, so here we have examples, and we have three access modifiers in Python. We have a public access modifier, we have private access modifiers, and we have protected access modifiers. Access modifiers are basically keywords that define the scope of your property or method in your class. So for example, I have here an example of using public access modifier in Python. First of all, if you do not define any access modifier, by default, Python will take that property or method as public. Here I have my init function in the person class, and I'm defining a name property, and I have not given a single access modifier. I'm not given any access modifier, right? We are just defining the property normally like we do. So Python automatically knows that this is a public property as there is no access modifier with it. Similarly, with age, you have no access modifier with age, so that's why it's a public property. Python can detect that. You have display age method in your person class, and this also has no access modifier, so Python knows that this is a public method. So when I create an object of person and I pass it John and 20, there are no restrictions on the usage of our properties and methods. You can use these properties and methods anywhere you want, in the class, outside the class, anywhere and everywhere you want to. So I can use display age everywhere. I can use my name everywhere, name property, display age method. I can use everything everywhere when I have the public access modifier. There are no limitations. Next, we'll go on to the protected access modifier. This access modifier defines that a property or method should and can be only used inside the class itself and the subclass. So for example, I define a property name and I give the protected access modifier to it. I will essentially define that this property can only be used inside the class in which it was defined and in a subclass of the class. I have an example here, class student, and in this we are creating three protected properties: name, role, and branch. How do we know these are protected? By an underscore. We denote a property as protected when we have an underscore before the property's name, right? So now branch, role, and name are three protected variables or properties. In our init function, we are accepting name, role, and branch, and we are giving those values to our name, role, and branch. Similarly, we have a protected method here, and we denote that we give an underscore to make a protected method or property, like we are giving over here. Now this display role and branch and our name, role, branch properties can only be used inside the subclass, right, and in the class itself. So when I create my friend and it inherits student, right? So all the properties and methods, all the protected public properties and methods will go in our subclass, right? And we're doing student.init. We are calling the superclass init method over here, right? And we are passing it all the values that we received in my friend. Then we have display details, that is printing the name. We are able to print the name over here as this is a subclass of student, and we are able to access name as it is protected, and protected variables are allowed to be accessed in a subclass of the superclass. Yes, of the superclass was not necessary, in the subclass of any class, right? And in this display details method, first I'm printing, and next we are displaying the role and branch. We are calling the display role and branch, and we are able to call as this is the subclass, right? Before I continue, I forgot to run this code. So over here we were printing name object.name and display, we were calling display age. These are public, so these are allowed to be accessed outside, right? So just wanted to show you. Back to this, now we'll create an object of our subclass, that is my friend. We are passing it the name Joe. We are passing the role this random big value, and we are giving the branch information technology IT, right? And we are calling display details. So when we call display details, it is a public method, so obviously we are able to call, and it is showing the name, and it is showing the roll number and the branch. So it will show the three things. Note that we can't directly access the name, role, branch, and display role and branch outside. There is a concept called getters and setters in Python, because of which we are able to access protected properties and methods outside the class. So, for example, over here we are using self.name, right? We are showing the name value. We are calling display details. We are not directly invoking self.name. We are not directly trying to show the value of self dot we are not directly trying to show the value of the name protected property. We are calling display details, in which it is printing the name and calling display role and branch, and that is allowed as display details is doing that work. We itself are not accessing name and display roles and branch outside. Display details is doing the work for us, in which of showing the name and role and branch. So next example, now we have this. We have the private access modifier example over here now. So let's just uncomment this. So we have now the private access modifier example. And to make a property or method private, we will have to give double underscores before the name of it. So for example, we have name, role, and branch, but we have double underscores before the names, right? So that shows that these properties are private and only accessible, only exclusively accessible to the class in which they are defined, right? Next we have our init, where we are initializing name, role, and branch, and we also have a private method, display details, that will show us all the values of each property. And then we have access private function that will call display details. Okay, so next what we are doing, we are creating an object person, in which we are passing all the same values, and then we are calling object.access private function. So what is happening over here, we cannot directly access the name, role, branch, or display details. We have access private function, a public method of person class, right? That is in which we are calling display details, so it does not give us an error, right? So for example, if I try to print, or let's leave that, if I try to call display details outside, for example, I try to call display details outside, what do you expect? Obviously you will get an error. That is because you don't have display details. You cannot access display details outside of your person class, right? Pretty cool. So over here we have three private properties, right? And those can only be accessed within the class. So in conclusion, we learned about public, private, and protected. Public are those access modifiers where the properties and methods can be used everywhere, outside the class, inside the class, and subclasses everywhere. protected is an access modifier where the properties and methods which are protected can only be used within the class in which they are defined and in the subclass uh, of that class, right? And the private is exclusively accessible only to the class in which they were defined. And this is it, guys, for the video. I hope you liked it. If you did, please smash the like button and subscribe. Thank you and stay safe.